Guys, this is my first time on stage as a ninja. I've spoken at thank you very much. Thank you. I've spoken at a couple of Lyra events with some of you folks before, but not like this. So thank you very much for joining us today. We have a great event scheduled. We got a lot of great content. We're going to kick it off this morning with my buddy over here, Dean Trempelas. Dean is with Impact. He's been about 10 years in the MSP space, helping folks like you grow and scale. He is also the weird lobster guy on Reddit. I'm not sure if you qualify him as a troll or not, but I would say definitely he's one of the better folks on Reddit. And the last thing about Dean, I find this super interesting. They always give me weird little facts. So Dean is not a celebrity, but his dog is. Dean has an influencer dog named Lily, and he also sells merch for said dog. So if you'd like to learn more about Lily, talk to Dean. Until then, Mr. Dean, take it away, sir.
Thank you. Now, if I was smart, I would have found out about the presentation remote and audio ahead of time. Welcome, everybody. How is it going? So I've already pulled a bit of a bait and switch on you. This is not the presentation that is directly on your agenda. So that should set the tone for the rest of the morning. And Ninja, specifically Jonathan Crow over there, Jonathan asked me to use the Ninja slide template. And given that his boss may be in the room and other important executives at Ninja, I felt that it was the only responsible thing was to say absolutely not, now that you've asked me to do it. So we're not going to use that at all. We are going to use my slide deck template. Take that, Jonathan. So the talk that we normally give at these ITX events presented by one of our founders at Empath, Kyle, is called Deconstructing Growth. And it is this really deep, math-laden finance course that you'll fall asleep listening to in most cases. And I figured we don't want to hear that. And Jonathan had asked me, hey, Dean, you've actually scaled an MSP. You're not just one of those people that pretends to coach people on how to do things. You've actually done it. Could you pivot the talk slightly? So here's our pivot. So normally this would be Kyle's About Me slide. And as you can see, he has a very impressive background, but Kyle's not here. So let's talk a little bit about why I'm here and what we're going to talk about. I am the co-founder of absolutely nothing. I've never co-founded anything. I have always been the first mate, the bridesmaid, but I have actually who said 10? You said 10 years? It's almost 20 years now because I'm old. I've got about 15 years of experience as a service and operations manager at an MSP that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That when I joined was about a $700,000 organization, and when I left, it was 55 million and still counting and still growing. And importantly, as an operations professional, if any of you are operations professionals, the business survived my exit, right? That should be the goal of all operations people, is to be fired tomorrow and it won't matter. So if you are an operations person, that's what you should be living for. So if you do want to download what you could have had Kyle shown up, there's a QR code to download Kyle's incredibly boring math-filled finance deck with worksheets and formulas and all sorts of boardroom nonsense that only the most highbrow of you would probably enjoy. But I am going to steal a few slides from Kyle. We're going to talk first just a little bit about growth and scalability and kind of set the stage that hopefully will help you guide the rest of how you're going to approach today's whole agenda of events. So I kind of want to just ask the audience really quickly, in 2025, how many of you actually had a growth plan for your MSP? Just show of hands. Define. Got some hands up, pretty good. How many of you are still on track with that growth plan and have looked at it since January? A couple of hands still came up. Good for you. That's amazing. I'm really proud of you. I don't believe you, but I'm very proud of you. It's one of those things, right? Like, even if we have a plan, it's hard to stay with that plan. It's hard to actually operationalize that growth. And I want to steal a little bit of Kyle's math to kind of frame why. So if we look at best-in-class benchmarks, and we could do an entire side presentation on why calling things best-in-class is a bunch of BS, but if we look at best-in-class benchmarks, the MSPs that are really hitting their growth targets, they're bringing on about 3.8 new clients per quarter. Interesting how you bring on 0.8 clients, but hey. They're spending about 27 grand total in customer acquisition costs, which is a ton of money. And that takes about 250 qualified leads to do. And importantly, qualified leads does not mean you bought a list with 250 people on it. That means a much larger list that you've already scrubbed, warmed up, aligned to your ICP with people that are actually willing to take a meeting with you and likely buy from you. That is a ton of work. And if you look at about the amount of hours that takes and the total amount of money that takes, that's about 15 customers a year. Has anybody in here added 15 customers in a single calendar year, other than maybe when you founded or got started? Good for you. That's amazing. I didn't see a lot of hands go up, because that's actually pretty hard. Even if you're really, really good at what you're doing, that's hard. And if you look at the total investment based on that per client acquisition cost, that's almost $500,000 invested in sales and marketing. Who has invested $500,000 in sales and marketing in this room at their MSP? Yeah, right? And even at a big MSP that maybe has a lot more fun money, who's putting that much money with intent into sales and marketing? That's a lot. And if you look at the hours that takes, that's a ton of time and effort. So let's just say that Kyle was here. You had heard his presentation. He pumped you up about working back everything you need to know to actually hit these growth targets. When you think about it, that is really a lot of time and money and effort if you actually do it. And so I want to talk a little bit then in my world about, well, what happens when you live inside that equation? Because I will let you all know right now, and if anybody's going to be presenting on this later, I apologize for stealing your thunder. I will let you all in on the dirty secret with all sales and marketing related growth strategies and thought leadership. Is everybody ready for this? This will completely make your time here worth it. This is your golden nugget. The only thing you need to do to be successful in sales and marketing is do the work. So everybody in this room that has joined a program, whatever you're in, we were for years, we were like a Robin Robbins MSP. Like if you join a program like that, it's not about the program, it's just doing the work. And we just saw how much work the work is. There is no Ozempic shot for sales and marketing. So if you're willing to do the work, you will grow. So I'm going to assume everyone here is willing to do the work. Let's talk a little bit more about what's happening inside that, what we need to do operationally, how that company is actually going to be built a little bit more to scale. Actually, before we do that though, that is a McDonald's hamburger. And I would like a volunteer or volunteers to give me an elevator pitch sale for that McDonald's hamburger. Anybody in the room here feels they could sell me that hamburger? I will pick on people. David, sell me that hamburger. I am.
Well, we've got this amazing piece of food for you. That will fill you up. And it tastes good. Would you like to have it?
That was amazing. Round of applause for David. He did qualify my outcome and needs, so good job. So I'll pick on somebody else. Brandon, what goes into, I know you don't eat this kind of food, but what goes into that burger? How, if I go to a McDonald's, how quickly can I have this burger? Anybody? Very fast. And so the point here is that generally, even though nobody really was willing to sell me this burger, if I, gun to your head, forced you to, probably everybody in this room could do a functional job describing to me what goes into a McDonald's hamburger, roughly what I would experience when I went to a McDonald's. And all of you could basically sell it if you had to. I'm not saying you want to. And I start off by this, I want to plant a seed in the back of your head. The reason for that is because it is ubiquitously consistent. Every McDonald's you've ever been to has functionally made, well, maybe not the one that looks like that, but has made that exact same hamburger the same way and roughly the exact same experience for you. And That is the key component of really understanding growth and scale. So if you're at a point now where you want to tune out and play on your devices, this would be the point to tune out and play on your devices. You have heard the most important part of the presentation. So that brings us then to actually scaling. And growth capacity, our ability to grow, is not actually people, even though it seems like it should be people. People, from an operations perspective, operations professionals like myself who don't really know what they're doing, we hide problems with people, we just throw bodies at it, in much the same way that, RevOps just throws dollars at it, we throw people at it. And ultimately this breaks down. You will run out of available money to only solve problems with people. If you would like a historical context for this, look at nearly any society that's needs to do something with people, and they've managed to find an unsavory way to utilize people, because as it turns out, it is really hard to actually scale something where people are your costs of goods sold. So that brings us to the first thing I want you all to really think about, is this idea of capacity and availability. Because where we're going here is we want to start thinking about, at our service organizations, what our capacity ceiling is. And before we can figure that out, we need to really understand that there are two components of that, capacity and availability. And we can't necessarily have them both, at least not today with the size organizations that we all have in this room. So capacity is pretty straightforward, right? Capacity is sort of the bulk amount of something you have available. At an MSP, that's probably like the number of hours you have available amongst your techs. Availability is the trickier one. Availability for us is the perception and reality of any of that capacity being consumable at a given moment. And so all of us are left in a position as service organizations, especially reactive external service organizations, where we have to balance the perception of availability against our capacity. It's quite literally what our whole premise is as an MSP. That is the M in the MSP. And well, that's hard. And you all know that's hard because you've had the phone ring where more than two people have needed something simultaneously, and you don't have two people to fulfill it. So we've all done this dance. And so understanding a little bit on the front side of what you're looking to solve as you scale. Are you looking to be a capacity organization, an availability organization, or are you trying to be a unicorn and do both, is really important context to frame how you're going to think about everything you're going to learn today. And capacity, and I just want to mention this, is not how it works in a project setting. In a project setting, capacity is simply availability minus allocation. We don't live in that world. And unfortunately, our industry has done a really bad job over the last 20 years, with a lot of thought leadership of teaching us kind of that mindset of capacity. But that's not the world we live in running a help desk whatsoever. Because we have this thing that we support called people, and people are reactive, and we have to react to them. And no matter how good you are of an MSP, no matter how tight your controls are, no matter how dialed in your SOC is, people are going to people and do dumb stuff that we have to react to. And we don't have a shared stakeholder. I can't take Andy, my client who's doing dumb stuff, and march him up to our shared boss's office on the 11th floor and say, what the heck is Andy doing down here? We don't have that luxury in an MSP. So we always have to balance the two. So I'll give you a really good example of what we're talking about here. These are two photos from some Capitol Grille somewhere of the service side, the front end, and the kitchen. The restaurant industry is actually really similar to our industry in how they have to approach a lot of service delivery. They have a good with no shelf life. Food really doesn't have much of a shelf life. Ours don't have a shelf life. There's this perception of high-end service that isn't really that high. You guys get the idea. So if we look at the kitchen, a kitchen is almost primarily going to be anchored with a capacity metric. A kitchen has a fixed maximum capacity. There's a finite number of prep stations. There's a maximum number of chefs or cooks that can be in the kitchen at one time. There's a finite number of dishes a kitchen can prepare at once to maintain a quality level. If they rush and try and cook all the steaks at once, that actually won't work, even if they're able to do it, because we need a full meal plated that's warm. So a kitchen works off of explicit capacity. And in fact, you take it a step further, in a restaurant, there's an explicit capacity for how many ingredients you can store. Things do not have a forever shelf life. My freezer and warehouse space is literally it. Yes, I can get a delivery, but today I have a fixed capacity. If I run out of fish, there's no more fish. I don't have an option. Why you're buying fish at the Capitol Grille, I don't know, but that's something BJ would do. In the back, yeah, that's a BJ move. If you flip over to the front side, well, yeah, the dining area, much like this room, does have some capacity. The fire marshal has probably said there's a maximum number of people that can be in the building. There is a maximum number of tables, but really their core metric is availability, because when we go to a restaurant, we go to the restaurant, like David said, when we're hungry, right? We want to eat, and we want to eat now. I don't want to eat 4 hours from now. I came right now. But they can't take everybody who wants to eat now. If all of us as a group decided we would go to the restaurant that's right down there right now, could they seat us? Does anybody think right now, with no preparation, could that restaurant seat all of us? Right, probably not. Like, it's very, very unlikely. And we're able to answer that because this industry's done such a good job of setting the perception for us that there is a finite availability. And so how do they manage that? Reservations, right? You make it in a nice restaurant, you make a reservation if you'd like to guarantee some availability. At a chain restaurant, you get the little buzzer and they tell you, hey, it's gonna be 45 minutes if you wanna wait. At that McDonald's, there's an implied SLA in the drive-thru. But all of those different cases, they are managing that perception of availability for their end customers. There's no one-to-one relationship of servers to tables, so there's an availability constraint with servers. There's an availability constraint with being able to bus tables and bring out food, but yet it all comes together where, generally speaking, we all know what to expect at a restaurant like this, and we're not focusing on those details as customers. We're able to focus on the food and the dining experience itself. And that's what I want you all to be thinking about at your MSPs, is basically what kind of restaurant are you looking to grow? And the McDonald's, the chain restaurant, the Capitol Grille, all of them are fine. All of them are fine. All of them can grow into massive organizations. There is nothing morally or ethically wrong with any of those types of business models. But you do need to figure out what your identity is going to be around capacity and availability, because we have to start doing some math to figure out our ceiling. So on your desks, there is a worksheet that, in all honesty, I did slap together a week ago, and it needs refinement. So if there's things in that y'all hate, let me know so that for the next ITX it can be better. There is a page in here that's going to help us diagnose our capacity ceiling. And I will let you all in on my second hot industry tidbit, my secret piece of advice that will offend some people in this room, quite possibly. There is no one metric that fits them all that exists for defining capacity, staff capacity in an MSP. And anyone you've ever heard on stage tell you that this is, Tech-to-Endpoint, this is the ratio, that is complete and utter horseshit. There is no metric. There's metrics for a lot of things in our business. That one does not have a fixed best-in-class metric. It literally depends entirely upon how you run your business and your service experience. So metrics, even a sheet like this is giving us an approximate idea. This is not a set in stone. If you're doing it one way, you are right, and if you're doing it the other way, you are wrong. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. But what we can do on this sheet, you don't have to do it right in this moment, but we're basically going to go through and figure out just how much available hours do you actually have. And we do that with a couple of key data points. We first of all have your total number of staff related to service delivery. So that's all your technical people, but that's also going to be any other department that directly supports rendering of that service experience. So if your account managers get involved with the support experience, they go into that count. If you have a technical account manager, they go into that count. If you have a VCIO that also gets in the war room to help when there's an emergency going on because they're technical, they go into that count. So it's all of the people that are helping to render the service experience. We're going to total them up. We're going to pick a number, which I know is hard to do, but we're going to pick an average number for the amount of available hours each of those persons have in your company. I gave the example of 35. Most of us buy 40 hours a week from our staff. We don't actually resell 40 hours, probably 30, 35 hours we resell. So pick that number of the actual amount of time they're contributing to service delivery. We then want to figure out a utilization target. I could do an entirely separate speech on why the word utilization is an absolute travesty, is everything you've been told about utilization is wrong, but I don't have time for that, and you don't want to hear that from me today. So we're just going to pick a utilization target, roughly 75 to 80% is what most best-in-class MSPs hit. And we're going to take all of this to basically do some quick math to figure out how many hours do you actually have at your disposal in a week. You can multiply by 4 to get a month. And the reason why we want to know this is if you go back to the beginning of this worksheet and use some of the customer acquisition cost math that I stole from Kyle's deck to figure out how many hours you're going to need to meet your growth goal, you'll be able to figure out if you have a deficit. And odds are you're going to have a deficit. All of us probably have a deficit. If you don't have a deficit, you should be really, really, really worried unless you're printing money. Like if your services gross margins are like 55% and you don't have a deficit, good for you. Get up on stage, tell us how you did it. But otherwise, you should have a deficit. And if you don't, you are probably overstaffed. And so what you're gonna find is that, well, by the math, no one has enough hours to support the growth we want, right? None of us have enough hours. So we gotta do something about that. That is basically your operational ceiling. So to raise that ceiling, what do we have available to us? Well, you're all smart people. You've probably already figured out where I'm going with this. We could hire more people. We could focus on efficiency. We're MSPs. We love efficiency. We're literally at an RMM vendor conference right now. The whole point of getting an RMM is efficiency. So clearly we all believe in efficiency. We can raise our prices. I mean, we're not stupid. We know that'll work as well. Like all of those things work, except no one of those things is actually going to be your long-term strategy, because no one of those things is actually something any one of you is going to go back today and execute on, because some of you have had 10 to 20 years and you still haven't executed on them. You will find out today, so like Joe will be on a little while. He's going to talk a little bit more about sort of the revenue model and some of the myths that we all tell ourselves about selling in an MSP. So he'll help you figure out a little bit more about how maybe, for example, hiring people, how you could afford to do something like that, but it's not a strategy. You're gonna find out a little bit later from Zentop when they're talking about some actual actionable ways that you can increase efficiency and have that conversation in your MSP. But largely, you've been gaslit by this industry on the real effect you're gonna get from efficiency. The sort of 50% gains or reduction in labor that vendors like me love to tell you is completely fabricated nonsense. You're gonna make small improvements with efficiency, but that won't solve it. You could raise your prices. Brandy will be on later. She'll talk more about how you can do revenue forecasting, and you'll learn quite a bit about how to plan for that, and that hopefully will bring the horror to your eyes that, wow, if I only want to solve this with bodies, I need all sorts of extra fun money coming in from the side. And if any of you do want to run your MSP as a front to launder cash, talk to me later. But otherwise, that can't be the strategy. So how do we combine all of this together? And we kind of want to look at 3 levers: people, process, and culture. So in terms of people, I was gonna make these shirts and I ran out of time, by the way. So I'll try to manifest this for the next one, right? How great would that be if we had Jonathan Crow, the Crow shirts? I don't know how he hasn't already done that as his personal brand. Ninja, what are you even doing, Ninja marketing? How is this not a thing? We wanna start pivoting how we approach the types of people we stack our organizations with. All of us already do a really good job of hiring empathetic people that want to help other people. That's great. We want to iterate on that. We want to start looking for repeatability and consistency in our staff over heroics. The idea that we need to hire, I just need that one more tier 3 and I can finally do the thing. No, you can't, and no, you won't. And to give you all some grace, this is how you all started your business. All of you were the hero. And your first handful of hires were you trying to hire basically a less functional version of yourself to assemble the Avengers. It is common sense to do that. All of us have done that. But at a certain point, we have to take a step back and realize we can't staff with heroes. We actually need consistent, repeatable people that can focus on experience. And I'll give you some metrics here. If this were an enterprise event, wink, wink, it does seem like Ninja's trying to turn it into one, good for them. But if we were at like ServiceNow or something right now, you would be seeing metrics that a good deflection rate in a help desk, about 80% of your tickets get deflected from having to go up into the organization. Which right away should tell you that the call centers and the massive help desks out there, they're not staffed with a bunch of heroes. So you don't actually need those heroes. As MSPs, we'd be a little bit more pragmatic here. We're probably not going to do 80% deflection. We are service businesses at a smaller scale that have to react to, customer uncertainty and chaos. But even then, a best-in-class MSP is probably still going to deflect somewhere upwards of 60% of all of their reactive ticketing from ever having to go higher than level 1. And if you're hearing me say that and you're saying, well, I don't see how we could possibly do that. Well, one of the ways you're going to start changing that is focusing on hiring a different type of person. That person who is able to execute repeatable tasks. One of the reasons why we were able to grow so well at our MSP is we went on a crusade of everything in this building has to be done by an L1. If I can't hire somebody and within a year have every L1 in the building give the exact same experience they would get from our highest level technician, we operationally have screwed up. And as I pointed out, I would rather hire 10 Jonathans. I would rather hire 10 people that are friendly, that I know are unflappable and will never ever break customer experience when they're talking to an end user over one tier 4 engineer that can fix something just by looking at it. And then that brings us over to process. Standardization is your scalability tax. You have to pay it. There's no way around this. If you want to grow, and when I say scale, I mean like not go out of business a year later. If you want to grow and really scale, you have to standardize. It's the tax we have to pay to the operational gods. There's just no way around that. And what I find happens at a lot of thought leadership is we push standardization towards stack alignment and brand and product alignment, and that will work. That will work wonderfully. If you're willing to go back and tell all your clients, you need to rip everything out and standardize to our particular stack, that is an amazing way to standardize. Show of hands, who here is willing to go back and tell all their clients today, hey, you need to pay for ripping everything out and doing it my way or you're fired. No hands went up, right? Because that is scary. Even if we know it will work, it's scary. So I propose compromise. We start looking at standardization. You can still go towards that goal. That's a great goal. But we start looking at standardization as there is a way we do things. And we figure out the lowest common denominator manifestation of that way, and all clients are brought to that standard. That's far more actionable and probably doesn't cost the client any money. And if you'd like an example of, kind of how that could work, I use something really simple like labeling. Maybe you say at your MSP from this point forward, every switch we deploy, port 1 is always the uplink port. I'm just making that up, but let's just say that there is no switch that our MSP has deployed where if I walk in, port 1 is not somehow used as an uplink port and labeled. So it might be labeled differently. Maybe switch at client A is labeled with a professional label maker. Switch at client B is labeled with a piece of white electrical tape and a Sharpie, but all of them are labeled. The lowest common denominator is this port will be used the same way, and there will always be a label. That style of standardization is much easier to get started on. And the goal we're looking for here is something consistent. The reason why I have Patrick there, if you think of what's the joke that when people call the Krusty Krab, hi, is this Krusty Krab? No, this is Patrick. The reason why I have that joke is he is consistent. He is consistent because people are only calling looking for the Krusty Krab. The joke wouldn't work if they called looking for something else. If they called looking for Patrick, the joke doesn't work anymore. So you want that level of consistency. And then that brings us over to culture. And I don't mean the squishy part of culture. This industry as a whole has done an amazing job over the last 10 years of kind of pivoting and understanding that our employees are people and we need to make our workplace somewhere that people want to be at. So you've done a really good job with that. That's not the element of culture I'm talking about here. I'm talking more about culture as it manifests and how we then approach selling growth. Fear, we're looking to overcome fear through culture. Fear of change is fear of growth. And I know that's sort of like a very simple statement, but all of you that are owner-led sales, you are not pushing changes because you're afraid to shake the tree. There's a fear that if I step too far, something will happen and I will lose that revenue. And that revenue pays the bills, and that revenue is why they're employed and why they get to own a house and why Net gets to eat dinner tonight. And I don't want to take that from any of my employees, so I'm gonna, be very careful with the changes that I make. That's almost every responsible business owner in every industry has that fear. So as an organization, we have to start working to adopting our culture where that fear is mitigated through the operational steps we've taken that then support that culture. So And to be completely blunt here, if you're not willing to modify your organizational culture, you will not grow. It is not possible. There's no company that has grown that's kept their culture static. They can keep the core elements static. Let's look at Ninja. When Ninja was a tiny little RMM vendor that had a weird, silly mascot, who would name an RMM company Ninja? What were they even thinking? Like when they were in that stage, the culture they had then is probably very similar to the culture now, but it's not exactly the same company. It can't be. If they still thought that way, if intrinsically they operated the way they did then, they would go out of business, they would fall apart. So they kept the most important parts of their culture and they iterated and improved it. And that's what I want you to do here, not to rip out your culture, to iterate and improve it, to support that growth. And what we really want to do is get it to a point where besides your core values and things like that, the way you operate, the way you conduct business, the way your service works is a core component of what it is for the way of your company. You know, there's an Acme way. I could go into an Acme client and immediately tell that is an Acme MSP client because the Acme way. And the Acme way is more than just we're respectful or, you know, we always solve problems. It might be things like we always wear a tucked in shirt. It might also be there's a very particular way that we enter time here. It might be there's a very specific way that we approach implementing MFA and, you know, identity centralization. But all of the things you do from a service standpoint, when you start standardizing on them, they become part of your company culture. There is a right way and there is a wrong way, and the right way is our way. And we want it so that when a new employee joins this type of service organization, within their first 2 weeks, they're already indoctrinated in that way. And so that's what I mean by iterate. You have all already done this with the squishy part of culture. You're going to do this with the day-to-day operationalization. When you operationalize I was trying to record a video on this, quick side tangent the other day. I make a lot of content, and I spent like 30 minutes yelling at my computer because I could not say operationalization. I still can't. I've never stumbled on a word in my life, and I found the word. So that's what we're looking to do from a culture standpoint. We want to have the service experience become a literal personification of your brand beyond simply how we talk to people on the phone or an email. The actual delivery of the service itself becomes the personification of your brand. The way you do things, regardless of the stack, regardless of what the industry's constraints are, is your way. If you're starting to do AI now, your clients will see you, managing, selling, doing whatever you're doing with AI and be like, oh, this is the Acme way. This feels exactly the way they approached BCDR 10 years ago. This is the way. All of that gives us confidence. That operational maturity gives us confidence. And this is ultimately what we need to scale. We need confidence. When you know what you deliver, selling gets easier. The scalability issues that we all run into, we solve them through having that ability to be confident about what it is we do and how we do it. It removes variables. It removes doubt. It removes you being in front of a prospect that is going to be the biggest client you've closed this year. You really want this revenue. When they suddenly at the last minute in your last call where you got the MSA ready for them to sign, where they're like, we really, really don't want to do MFA everywhere. Confidence is what gives you the ability to very quickly, confidently look at them and explain why you, with all due respect, don't give a shit what they want. They're going to do it. The rest of us, what do we do now? We give them a waiver. We'll talk about it again. Oh, we'll catch that up in the first QBR. We'll get them there. We waffle. We backtrack on something like that because there's not complete confidence they're going to say yes to our service experience. That standardization is going to give us a lot more confidence for everybody in our sales organization to be able to explain exactly what good looks like from us without having to waffle in those situations. And it's important to remember throughout all of this, and I think someone else is going to talk about this today, your service is not really that unique. And I say this because this is the other thing a lot of us kind of end up using as an excuse for scale. I can't really do what you're saying, Dean, because our market is different. What you don't understand about my MSP. No, I understand your MSP. In fact, I could probably spend 5 minutes with any of you and probably do this cool party trick where I can describe your entire company to you, because guess what? We all do exactly the same thing. Gasp, sorry. And that's okay. It's okay that we're all in the same industry. It's okay that fundamentally everybody at every table here is doing the exact same thing. It's okay that the differentiators we've clung to aren't really that significant or different. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean that you're some dirty bottom floor commodity. It's okay to accept that we're all fundamentally working the same way. And I give you this example of lawn care. Do any of you care how many blades of grass that machine cut? Is that a metric anyone cares about? Does anybody care, other than maybe somebody like Jesse who likes farm equipment, does anybody here care what brand of machine that is? No? Do we care about the horsepower? Do we care that it's orange instead of red? No? Weird. Do you actually just care that you have a nicely, evenly manicured lawn that is the color that you expect it to be at that time of year, that's safe for your kids and pets to be on? Yeah, that's probably it. And that they do what they said they were going to do when they said they were going to do it, and give you a heads up if they can't, right? That's probably all we really care about. And I say that because hopefully that helps you all kind of realize that some of the reasons why we all hold on to it's my IP or the way my MSP does it, I don't want them to know. We're all doing this. We're all doing this with different colored mowers. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. And accepting that is so wonderfully liberating because it allows you to be better than garbage. I know, that's an incredibly low bar. There you go, friends, at Ninja ITX 2025 in Austin. Dean told you be better than garbage. Woo! But I want you to think about that for a minute. What do I mean by that? So we started off talking about food, and I've got the McDonald's burger on one end, got some fine dining on the other end. You don't want to be that McDonald's burger. You probably also don't want to be that fine dining experience. And in fact, the professional services industry would support that. If you really do want to focus on being truly white glove, how many people in here like to say they are a white glove service provider? Anyone? Thank you for being honest. There's more people than just you. Thank you for being honest. A lot of us like to say that because for a lot of us, that's where this industry was born out of. We are better than the guy who installed RAM in a computer in a hardware store in the 90s. We're better than the jackass who slung copiers. If any of you own an office supply company, I'm sorry, but we all know how office technology companies are. We're better than them. That's where this idea came from that we're white glove. But if you think about it, no one in here is white glove. No one in here even buys actual white glove. 80% of the professional services market, the bulk of it, is the middle. All of you have lawyers, all of you have CPAs, all of you have a doctor. Any of you have a private lawyer on staff? No? Any of you have a private doctor on staff? Certainly you have an Alfred the butler who lives in your house. No? You mean you just transact with an external firm when you need it and you try to find one that's at a pretty good quality level that matches your needs? Weird that none of you buy white glove, but so many of us purport to be white glove service organizations. So be better than garbage, but stop chasing this white glove fiction. Live in that middle 80%. You know how much business there is in that middle area? Dominate that middle. Absolutely crush. That whole middle is this huge band. Pick your part of that middle and dominate it. You know what? We're really, really good. We're not perfect. If you want that service provider that is going to wear white gloves and get rid of the dust. If you're going to be Alfred, who's literally going to manifest behind Bruce Wayne in the Batcave with what Bruce Wayne didn't know he already needed, so that those are the only times you ever see in the comics Bruce Wayne will be like, because Alfred's appeared behind him. If you really want to try to offer that, then bless your hearts, good for you. That is hard. In only incredibly small MSPs that only have a couple of people, where the principal is still the primary tech and the owner, or very large organizations that can just hemorrhage money at it, really can have a shot at delivering that in a meaningful way. If you're not that MSP and you still want to strive for that, that's okay. I'm not telling you not to have a goal, but dominate the middle first. Just become so consistently good that perfect isn't even something that your clients care about, because you're not buying on perfect. You think your clients are buying on perfect? So let's quickly go back to that worksheet. If you haven't already, go to section 5 on your worksheet. And my intent with this worksheet was not to give you something that you would fill out at the end that would bring you to some great conclusion. It was more to give you a place throughout the day as you listen to the different people presenting, go through the sessions, to kind of collect some of your thoughts so you can leave here with, it's kind of a Mad Lib at the end, to kind of leave here with a little bit of a statement around what it is you want to start doing at your MSP to really start moving the needle on an element of growth. So take a look at section 5, and I'm not saying you even have to fill it out right now, unless you already have a great idea. Start filling that out and use that as a bit of a filter as you're going through today to start thinking about growth in your MSP and what nuggets are going to be the most important to you. If you'd like a copy of Kyle's boring deck, you can scan the left QR code. And if you want my deck with all sorts of razzle-dazzle and razzmatazz, then you can scan that QR code. And hopefully both of those QR codes go to the deck, and I'm not just, farming all your data right now. Wow, if Jason Slagle was still here, he would be so disappointed in all of you. You just scan that code without even thinking.
We trust you that much.
I like you. If you'd like to connect with me, please go ahead, that's my LinkedIn. And before I get off stage, I would like to invite all of you to join my organization, Pet New, People for the Ethical Treatment of Ninja Users' Eyeballs. We want dark mode, damn it. Why don't we have it? We're all sick and tired of having our eyes bleached. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you for being Ninja partners. Ninjas are really, quick side tangent. So I've had the great fortune to be involved in this industry for a very long time, and I get to be able to go both as a vendor and an MSP to a lot of different anchor vendor events. And we talked about culture earlier in this deck, and what I think one of the things that makes Ninja really special is they have not lost that initial spark that so many of us fell in love with when they were small, which is really cool, because there are not a lot of tech companies that we can honestly say that about. So just a shout out to the whole Ninja team for keeping that element of their product going that is still driving that level of innovation and fun and weird that have kept us all in their ecosystem. And I hope it never dies. Great job, guys.